Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and sitting right next to me is my co-host with the deep cold back with us. I can tell he's counting the days until it's Speedo weather. Chris Legates, how are you, sir?
I don't know where you come up with these every week.
It's not easy, you know.
I do not know how to even answer something like that, so I'm going to just pass it back to you.
Pass it back to me. I got to tell you, before we start, I am exhausted. 90 minutes on the phone, as I mentioned earlier, with my daughter and the ex-employer, which whom shall remain nameless, just to liquidate a fund. But that's neither here nor there. I'm ready for this.
Sure.
Y'all didn't tune in to hear my woes. Let's give an official TCS fast clap. Welcome to our guest, Noelle Ward, creator of Life Skills for College. Welcome, Noelle, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Let's just dive right in, Noelle. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ultimately came to develop Life Skills for College? And also, if you could, was there an aha moment?
Yes. So my background, I'm an occupational therapist by background, and I've spent my 19 years of my career thus far in leadership, the majority of that time. And I really noticed when I was working in those leadership roles, I really started about 10 years ago when I was working with new college graduates, college students, and high school students. I noticed this shift, and I was really having to coach the teens and young adults much more so than I had in the past. And when I say coach them, I mean coach them through, in the workplace, coach them through how to navigate the workplace, whether their role was a volunteer, whether they were a student, whether they were a new employee. They didn't know how to fulfill their roles. And it wasn't just at work, it was also their home life. And then because they were having problems in their home life, that was also spilling over into their work performance. And then what really disturbed me was there was a lot of discontent and unhappiness with their lives and with work. And they were often blaming either the job or their situation. But what I saw is it wasn't the job or the situation, it was their inability or their lack of skills to navigate their situations that was causing them such trouble. And once they had a little bit of coaching and just got some basic skills, their stress started to go down. They started to know what to do. They had a step-by-step plan of, okay, I can do this. And then they would build on their skills, and their skills would get better, and then they'd have more confidence, and then they would start to branch out some more, and then they would start to figure things out on their own more. But there was definitely a shift, and it really concerned me. I thought for my work as a hiring manager, I really needed more people coming into the work field that were better prepared to perform. And then as a mother, I thought, wow, we should really be teaching these skills much earlier, because all of these young adults deserve to have the foundational skills for success. And they just were coming out without that, whether they were in high school, in college, or just out of college.
Interesting. And
so that's what started all this. That was one of my aha moments.
Yeah.
That was
wow, this is an opportunity that is definitely there's a need here.
Wow. And can you tell us what type of ways you're working with prospective clients? Is it strictly face-to-face? Do you utilize video conferencing or some other form of technology?
Well, yeah, Life Skills for College is all done online. We used to have local workshops here where I live. We would do it for a couple of years. I worked with teens and kids in the local market and worked with all this material and worked one-on-one and tested and did those types of things. But there was a limited reach here in my local area, and I wanted to be able to serve teens throughout the country and beyond.
Sure.
And so we took all that data and those information and have put it into an online courses, several online courses that teens can take wherever they are.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Chris?
and part of the online classes, one of it is obviously they get the information and they get it in different ways through our videos and through our cheat sheets and things of that nature. But we also do social media challenges so that they can engage and actually practice the skills. And then they get put into prize drawings to be able to put those skills into practice. Because we don't want them to learn the information. We want them to use the information.
Utilize it, right.
Right.
Chris?
Hey, Noelle, first of all, I wanted to say thank you for joining us. And number two, it's really a great idea. When Mark and I were presented with your Instagram page and we went over it and we looked at it, I've spent 26 years now coaching in college women's soccer. So the idea is now, especially dealing with the modern student athlete, it really does sound like the right timing for something like what you do. And our
Thank you.
podcast is geared towards student athletes that want to take their athletic careers to whatever the next level may be. What do you think are some of the common denominators you believe all college students need to be in tune with, let's say, to be successful in college?
Well, I think there's two main things that I see, and the first one is communication skills, and especially when you're talking about college athletes or student athletes who are trying to get scholarships and going off to college. There's a couple things. We all know that they need to make a good first impression and be able to, have a good handshake and make eye contact and send the right nonverbal cues when they're meeting someone with college admissions or a coach and things of that nature, as well as being able to present themselves on TV and on social media in a good light. Those are some of the basics, but some of the other components that I see of people that really excel are those who can assertively communicate their needs in a respectful manner. They're not aggressive, they're not passive aggressive, they're not passive. And then they can show some leadership skills related to being able to facilitate collaboration within a group of people, especially if they're playing a team sport that is a group sport versus individual sports. And then conflict resolution within those communication skills. Mm-hmm. So if they're having a conflict with a teacher, that they can go and address that issue on their own. They don't need their parents or their coach to intervene on their behalf. If there's a conflict on the team, that they can resolve that within the team or within the other person on the team. Because if you can't have those conflicts resolved, then it affects your performance. And even if you're on an individual sport, let's say tennis, you may have a conflict with your coach, and you need to be able to talk through that. Because if you don't, there's going to be a barrier and some tension that's going to prevent you from getting to your goal faster. So the communication skills would be the first thing. Mm-hmm. And then the second piece that I see is having a successful mindset. And some people call that attitude. That's part of it. You can have a really good attitude, though, and not have a success mindset. And what I mean by that is sometimes we're our own worst enemies. We have these self-limiting beliefs. And we need to be able to teach teens how to shift that story. And the teens that can do that, the teens that can shift a story. And what I mean by that is, let's say somebody feels like they've been disrespected. Mm-hmm. One person could look at that and say, ooh, kind of bow up and say, well, they've disrespected me and I need to, they've got to know that they can't do that to me, and how they respond. Versus somebody else may say, wow, I wonder what's going on in their life. They're just doing the best they can today. I'm going to let that roll off my back. And so how they perceive the things around them. The same thing goes for failures. Those who have a failure and then start to have a story in their head of, well, I'm no good, I can't do this, have a very different outcome than those that say, okay, fine, I failed at this, that is really disappointing, but now I know how not to do it. I need to do more of this. I need to fail several times and correct myself in order to reach my goals. And they look at it more of a challenge, like I need to fail this many times in order to get to my goal versus, oh, I failed, I'm not going to ever reach my goal.
Excellent. I just spent some time in a workshop at my university, and the title of the workshop was dealing with college students in the new normal, okay, and how it pertains to mental illness as well on college campuses, which I think we know is growing at a rapid rate, and we know that the 18 to 25-year-old age group is one where mental illness and problems are just really kind of coming to the surface. The speaker said 61% of incoming college freshmen are not prepared for college. What aren't they prepared for, and why do you think that is?
Okay, so I see a few different things. The main thing that the students are reporting themselves, as well as their parents, and definitely the college professors are saying, is that they're not prepared to be independent. And here's what I mean by that. Some basic things, like you have to be able to budget your dining dollars. And what I'm hearing, especially from the young men, is they'll blow through their 3 months budget of food in the first month. And then they're like, oh, wow, what should I have done differently? But I'm even talking about things like knowing what to do after a minor car accident. Like when you have a fender bender, what do you do? We've had students say, well, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I just fled the scene. I did this and I did this, but I didn't think to exchange my information, or I didn't know who to call. And then things like, okay, let's say you don't feel very well. Well, is it a cold and you can take some over-the-counter medicines and you need to go to class? Or is it an infection and you need to stay home or go to the doctor? So some of those basic things, as well as knowing how to be resourceful. And that one surprises most of the parents, because in the age of Google and YouTube, you would think our teens are really resourceful, can find what they need. And in many ways they can. But even the master's level interns that I'm currently working with, I'm constantly having to say, well, I don't know. Have you Googled it or YouTubed it? And can you figure it out? In 10 minutes, you can figure that answer out on YouTube. But they don't think about using that as a resource to your day-to-day activities and life skills that they need to do to master what they're doing.
And how much of it do you think we use the term of the helicopter parent now, or hovering? How much of that do you think is a direct result of that sort of not really being the autonomy, let's say, of a student now, where they've been kind of coddled through things? And we talk about the word entitlement, which comes up a lot now, but not to use that one as much, but to use more of the hovering parent, the helicopter parent, where kids really haven't had to figure things out on their own. Would you say they're a byproduct of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I've tried to think of, what is the real reason behind that? And sometimes, I do think the parents get a bad rap for hovering, which, obviously we do need to give them more chances to fail. We need to give them more freedoms. We need to give them the time to work some things out on their own. And it's hard as a parent to let them do that, but we're failing them if we don't let them do that. But I think part of the things that have happened, and I'm sure you gentlemen can speak to this, we're seeing more and more competition just to get into college with your college admission scores, your test prep, getting scholarships, and then the amount of time we're spending on after-school activities and homework and things of that nature. So their lives are very, very scheduled. And when you talk to high school students right now, they feel very overwhelmed by the amount of things they have to get done and the amount of time they have to do it in. And then you look at the parents, and the same thing's happening in their lives. And now we see more and more parents where both parents are working. And so there isn't as much time, for example, when you're at home to talk about things like budgeting, or there's not as much time to give them the space to cook their own dinner or help the family cook dinner and manage some of those basics. But there are still opportunities. Like, for example, I was talking to a pediatrician the other day, and she was talking about the teens that come in to see her don't even know how to have a conversation with her and explain to her why they're even there, and the parents do it for them. Mm-hmm. And so she often has to tell the parents to stop, and she looks at the teen and says, you're a young adult, you can tell me what you're here for. But we're not expecting that of our young people, and I'm not sure why that shift has occurred.
Well, we can tell you firsthand, Noelle, from our conversations with coaches, that a lot of what you're just saying in regards to the pediatrician happens with college coaches on recruiting trips with their parents and student athletes, where the parent acts almost as an agent for, the young man or young woman. And a lot of times the coaches will stop them and say, listen, yes, I want to speak with your son or your daughter. I want to get to know them. And a lot of this, I think, like you said, is a byproduct of this hovering parent in this generation.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really doing them a disservice. And I feel bad that the millennials get such a bad rap because of like you use the word entitlement, but we see that actually in the workforce. And we still have parents calling to say, oh, my child's can't come to work today because they're sick. And it is mind-blowing that we have parents calling in for work for their children. It's just crazy. And it does happen. And so, of course, we give the millennials a bad rap, but honestly, that's our fault. We have not done a good job giving them the freedoms and expecting them to take care of their needs and to be independent.
Noelle, how could a professor or a coach or someone in residential life on a college campus help that freshman, that part of the 61% that is maybe not prepared? How can they help them be more acclimated to the college campus and college life?
The most important thing, I think, is to help them take care of their needs. So we need, almost like a coach, you need to coach them to take care of it. So, for example, if they need to learn how to defend their boundaries, and their boundaries could be anything from their time, defending their time, to defending their personal space with their roommate, to sexual boundaries. All of those things, we have to be able to teach them how to do that. That's not a natural thing. That's a skill that is developed. And when we step in and do things for them, like try to resolve a conflict with, for example, I talked to many, what you call like a residential assistant or RA in a dorm. And they say parents call them all the time because of roommate conflicts and ask the RA to go get involved. Wow. And so the RA, if they are going to get involved, they need to go down and teach the two college students how to work it out between them versus them coming in and fixing it for them. And the same thing for coaches. If they're struggling with something, the coach needs to give them strategies on how to resolve the problem on their own and say, here's some strategies, try this and report back to me. And let's talk about how it went. And if we need to adjust, we'll adjust versus here, go do this or try this. And then that's the end. We got to coach them through these skills.
Noelle, what are you seeing as some of the pitfalls on college campuses now for students? And when you speak with them, what are they doing well? And what do you think that maybe they're misinformed or deficient in?
Well, there's a couple of things they're doing very well. Honestly, from an academic standpoint, many of them are doing very well. They feel prepared. They have the basics behind them. They have the foundation behind them. And they have the basic skills. Like they know how to at least go to the store and purchase what they need. They can get through with the basics. What they're deficient in is a couple of different things. One of it is the little small decisions that they're making. It's easy for one small decision to then become another decision that's a small decision but builds up. For example, let's say somebody, their friends are all going out, and so they're going to go have a good time, and it's time for them to go to class. Well, I'll skip this one class and go out with my buddies. Well, then the next day, I don't feel great. I think I might skip class today. Then all of a sudden, these little decisions start to add up, and then it's like, oh, wow, I haven't been to class much at all this semester, and now I feel really behind. Other things like knowing how to break up with somebody. That's a problem that we see. Everyone breaks up via text now, but then they don't know what to do when they see each other in the same social circles again. It's like, well, that's because there was no closure. There was no respectful ending to what occurred. So those are some of the areas they struggle with. So back to the point where I was saying, they seem to academically be prepared to at least start college. One of the things they struggle with is once they get there, they're a little misinformed about what to expect. And I know they've been told, but I think there's a big slap of reality when they get there. And maybe they were really good in school because they were good at memorizing. Well, memorizing is great in high school, but when you get in college and your workload doubles, memorizing isn't always an effective strategy anymore. But if you don't have any other strategies in your tool belt, all of a sudden you start to sink. And having those other strategies, knowing when you're taking a test, how to actually analyze the question and figure out what they're really asking, those types of strategies, I feel like they're misinformed on as far as understanding what to do next. In general, the whole misinformed compartment, two other components I see there is sexual health when it comes to consent. There's still a lot of confusion and misunderstandings about what consent is. And I also see another issue and a lack of information related to credit cards. If you ask the college students, they all think they should have credit cards. They all think they are capable of managing a credit card. But when you start to ask them questions about, well, what is your rate and what is a fixed rate and what's an adjustable rate and when are the dues and what are the fees, they have no idea how to answer those questions. And so there's a real lack of understanding of, in order to have a credit card, here's what you need to understand. They don't know those parts of it. So that's where I see the biggest opportunities.
Yeah, I've always thought that high school should do a bit of a better job on the financial aspect.
Yes. And, some schools are starting. I'm seeing improvement. We have a long way to go, but there's definitely improvement, and I'm very hopeful for where that's headed.
Yeah, I just, from my own personal experience, my daughter's a freshman, so we just went through the whole credit card thing. And in my background, I'm in the finance area, so my reasoning was, you want to start building up the credit, but it was a very long discussion, and
it's good.
Yeah,
teaching her.
She's very lucky to have you.
Yeah, teaching her the pros and cons of all that.
Right, and then emergency use of the credit card doesn't mean that you need Chinese food on a Friday night.
Yeah, that's right.
Or a Starbucks.
Right. Well,
yeah.
and, a lot of the students, they love to. Oh, I've got a gas card. Well, they're eating dinner at the gas station. It's
right.
like, it looks like they're spending it on gas, but really, it's a pack of beer and.
Yeah, right.
So, and related to that, I was talking to a dad yesterday, and he said, "Wow, I forgot to tell my teen that when she uses an ATM that is not her bank's ATM, that there are extra fees associated with that." And he's like, "I really got hit hard the first semester with all those extra fees."
Yeah.
Ouch.
Mark.
Yeah.
So, Noelle, is there a common theme that you're finding with freshmen? You mentioned with the boys and the food, but are there any differences you can highlight between boys and girls outside of the food aspect?
Yeah, the food is definitely a big one for the boys. What we see more on the girls' side is this kind of OCD perfectionism tendency, and they're often scared to move forward because they're paralyzed by the need to be perfect. And the way that even translates, even sometimes into, let's say, their study habits. Mm-hmm. They may go to class and they'll take notes, and then they'll come back and they'll spend hours trying to make sure their handwriting is perfect and the notes are perfect and color coordinated and all these different things. But if they're not a kinesthetic learner, or if they're not a visual learner, that's really not a good use of their time. And even if they are, that may not be the best use of their time. Maybe they learn better from an auditory standpoint. So in that case, recording the lecture and then listening to it again would have been a much better use of time than spending hours trying to make sure their notes look perfect. But even doing things like trying new things, I work with some college students where we were just trying to take a video. I said the assignment was just film a video on your phone and then figure out how to edit it. There's all kinds of simple apps. Look it up on YouTube and it's a simple app and edit the video. And they were paralyzed because everything they did had to be perfect and this wasn't right. And they just couldn't even complete the task. And I was like, wow, this is a simple task you can do on your phone. And I know you take videos on your phone. So, you're overthinking this. Just start somewhere and then move forward. And
I assume that's because they're viewing things online and whether it be from Hollywood or what have you.
Yes,
everything looks
videos.
Perfect.
And that's their expectation of themselves. Yes, that is exactly right.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And honestly, some of it is just their developmental stage of life. That's not uncommon for that age, but I do see it paralyzing people at a different rate than I had seen, several years, really about a decade ago. I didn't see it to this extent.
Right.
Are there higher levels of anxiety, would you say now too, Noelle?
Yes. It's interesting. We, in our local workshops, not only do we work with teens, but we also worked with second grade up through high school. And when we asked the students, we said, what is it you want us to, we've got our curriculum here, but what do you want to know about? The most common theme that came up was stress management. And I'm talking about even from our second graders. And that was not initially in our curriculum. We did build that in because it was such a common theme from parents who have divorced and having to deal with that, as well as just, wow, when I go off to college, now I'm an adult. This isn't playtime. I actually have to take care of myself and I have responsibilities and I'm not ready to do this. I wasn't really mentally tuned into this yet and I want to go back. So some of those components. And you mentioned earlier the mental health component. I've spoken with 3 parents this week and that all had children their sophomore year in college is when they started having an increase in anxiety. And it was significant. And one of those people also had a mental health disorder. They also got diagnosed with bipolar disease that really started to manifest in their sophomore year. Wow. But the other 2 were anxiety. And they'd always been maybe a tad on the anxious side, but they had functioned well in high school and they didn't have any trouble with it in high school. But then they got to college and all of a sudden the anxiety became very overwhelming, so much so that both of them had to come out of school for a brief amount of time and then go back. And that's all of a sudden I'm starting to hear more and more of those. And the students are really struggling. They are struggling. There's so much stimulation. There's so much pressure to do well and to be ahead and so much pressure they put on themselves that I see that feeding into this anxiety.
In those cases that you just mentioned, how did that manifest? Did the student come forward to the parent?
Well, yes, they ended up doing it, but not until they hit the crisis mode. And that's the problem. And all 3 parents, they were fantastic parents. They were tuned in. They talked with their students or their children. And they said, in retrospect, I could see maybe a few things here and there, but I just thought it was just them being a teenager or just the transition or just, being on their own. It is stressful. And they didn't see it till it really got to the point. And I had the same, I've had the same problem with my child. There was a time where I saw some problems coming up. And I thought, well, this is just the normal, growing pains and coming of age types of things. And it wasn't until it gets to a certain point, you're like, oh, wow, okay, now I see this anxiety has hit a level that needs more attention. And those subtle signs, it's easy to see when you look back. And even then it's not easy to see. But sometimes, especially when they're away from you, it takes them coming forward. And the other piece of that is we're really good at hiding what we don't want people to see.
Sure.
And especially when we go off to college and we want to be independent and we want to separate from our parents and say, look, I can do this. I'm an adult now. Right. And we want the freedom of being an adult. We don't want our parents to know that we're not doing well. And so we often don't reach out until it hits that crisis period.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just in speaking of that, we talk about more and more on the college campuses how inundated our counseling services are now with students dealing with a wide variety of issues now.
Yes, and I'm interested. I do a lot of research in studying of why that might be, and I really haven't found a core reason to why that's. I have my own theories, but I haven't seen anything to support it in the research yet. But I do find it to be a fascinating trend that is definitely not being ignored anymore because it's becoming so prevalent.
And Noelle, you've touched upon performance pressure, and you've touched upon failure. Do you have those discussions with students and their parents about the inevitability that they're going to fail, and perhaps viewing failure through a positive lens or a different lens.
Absolutely. And this is something I talk about a lot on my Instagram feed, and I sprinkle it in as often as I can. And with all of our courses, this feeds its way in there someplace, because without, if you're not failing, you're not trying, and you're not learning, and there's no growth, because we often learn the most from our mistakes. And so, one of the things that I work with my children personally, as well as my students, is, okay, that's fine. You made a mistake. Fantastic. What did we learn from that? Let's move forward. Mistakes are required in order for growth. And if you look at people that are successful, it's not necessarily that they made any more or less mistakes than anybody else. They just learned from them and kept going. And that's the biggest difference, is learning from the mistakes and then still moving forward.
That's a great piece of advice. Absolutely. Noelle, so far, you've answered all of our questions with the greatest of ease. You get to take a breath, towel off, because it's time for the getting to know you portion of the TCS interview. Mark and I,
fantastic.
Yeah, Mark and I have spent a long time compiling these questions just for you.
All right.
Now, many guests that have sat in your spot before have failed under this line of questioning. So I hope you're prepared, because
bring it on.
Cue the music, Mark.
Here we go.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you.
I'm dancing right here.
Yeah.
I'm starting to dance.
Oh, I'm dancing.
You're dancing
I don't really
too.
sing,
Oh,
but I'm
awesome.
dancing. Oh, yeah.
All right. Let's fade her out and get started here. Noelle, if we were to search your phone, what would be the top 3 played songs or artists?
Ooh. Well, my phone is very interesting. You see everything from gangster rap to Broadway musicals. But my top 3 right now, I would say Bruno Mars' song Perm. Let's see, Meghan Trainor's song Me Too.
Okay.
And then some Aerosmith. Right now. Those are definitely my top 3 these days.
All right.
I like that mix.
Yeah.
Who is the most famous person in your contact list?
I don't really have any famous people on my contact list. I'm pretty much your average Joe, but always glad to meet you. I have met several people, but none that would be in my phone list for sure.
Well, we'll have to change that. We'll give you our contact, and you can put that in your phone.
Fair enough.
When
I'll
you're
put you guys in
when
there.
you're asked that question again, you know the answer.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Perfect.
Right.
And question number 3: do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, I do. There's a quote by Benjamin Franklin that says, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." That's by far my favorite.
I like that.
That's a great one.
That's a great one. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Can you give the listeners a little known fact about yourself?
Well, when I was in college, I was robbed at gunpoint in my apartment by a man in a ski mask.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's my roommates and I actually, we were all home, and so that was quite an experience. Everything worked out okay. We were all fine in the end.
And was the perpetrator caught?
He was caught that evening.
Excellent.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Yeah, he was. So the hard part with that, though, is he was let out that same evening on bail, but we did not know that.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
so
my
that was a
gosh.
little unnerving when I did find out later. But yes, anyway, I had to go identify him and all those things. It was a traumatic experience, but I learned a lot from it.
Well, that's anxiety right there.
100%.
Yes, it was.
Okay, question number 5. Who's been the biggest influence in your life?
Well, both of my parents, I would definitely say, have been a huge influence, especially my father, related to a couple of different things. He's been a businessman, and I used to work for him in the summers, and I would listen to him around the dinner table talk about the challenges he faced at work. And I learned a tremendous amount from him about how to be a good employee and how to be a leader from doing that. But he also taught me these life skills that I'm so passionate about. My mother did as well, but I remember my father teaching me how to balance my checkbook and teaching me how to change a tire. And at the time, there at a local college campus near us, there was many moons ago, but there were college students being abducted and thrown in trunks of their cars. And so we got out in the car, and he showed me what to do if I were ever thrown in the trunk, and how to get out, and how to kick out the light and get my hand out, and all those pieces. So he definitely was doing his best to set me up for success.
Keep you safe. Life
That's
skills.
great. Yeah,
That's
awesome.
right.
I like it. Question number 6. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Well, that's going to be tough. I would say my grandfather, who died when I was 4. He seemed like an amazing man that people speak very highly of, and I'm the only grandchild that remembers him at all. So I would love to. I would love to spend lunch with him. And then my second choice, I know you only asked for one, but would be Daniel Tosh. He's a comedian that I would love to spend lunch with. He cracks me up.
Awesome.
Next question: if you weren't a business owner, what do you think you would be doing?
Well, I think I'm actually doing exactly what I want to be doing. You know, I love being an occupational therapist. That's actually my full-time job. I'm the director of rehab for a home health organization, and I love that. And then I love teaching life skills as a business owner. So I'm doing the two things that I would want to do.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Question number 8. This is the toughest one. What is one thing you believe that others might think is crazy?
I believe that there is a force, and I am a Jedi. I don't tell people that.
That sounds perfectly normal to me.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you know, I do believe in a universal energy that we can channel and be a part of, and so I kind of envision that to be the force. And so, yeah, not many people know that about me, but I do believe that, and I don't say it often because they would think I'm crazy.
Cat's out of the bag now.
That's right.
Question number 9. Can you tell us what your morning ritual is?
Yes, I would love to tell you that I get up early and I work out and I do all these great things, but I'm a night owl. And so my day starts off by hitting the snooze alarm several times. And I know that's not the right thing to do. I know this, and it's something I'm working on. But I will say that once I get up, I do a meditation, and I do jot down notes in my gratitude journal every morning. And then I set the day's intention. So I have a daily goal setting, and then I kind of schedule out my day. And I have my 3 main goals that I want to accomplish that day to live the life that I think is most fulfilling.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sounds perfect. Last question. What book are you currently reading or have just read?
I've just started The Vanishing American Adult by Senator Ben Sasse, which is fascinating. I'm really enjoying that. And I would love to say that I'm reading it, but I'm doing audio tape because I'm rarely get to sit still myself as a busy parent. So I listen to it on the way to and from work every day.
Yeah, I like that. I use that quite often.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
I mean,
Noelle, you handled this with the greatest of ease, and we're very impressed with you because typically the getting to know you portion of this podcast has worn down some of the best guests we ever had. But you sailed right through it with the greatest of ease. I know that from a baseball reference that you knocked it out of the park.
There's no question about that.
And the crowd cheers for that.
Yeah.
You don't even need to towel off. No need for a Gatorade.
That was like
pretty impressive, and especially with the Aerosmith in there too. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think I
Yes, yeah. I have quite the rock genre in there as well. So again, I go the whole gamut.
It's funny, you know. Before we interview someone, we typically put on some music here, and what did we have?
Tonight we had some Van Halen.
We had some Van Halen going on. That's right.
And with David Lee Roth, by the way. That's the only Van.
Well, that was my next question. It has to be David.
Yeah, love you. You know, I like you, Sammy, but no.
It's not the same.
It's not the same.
No,
not even close.
But our point was that, you know, I turned to Chris and I said, "There's no music like this these days.
Yeah.
There's nothing."
It's good stuff.
You know, we come to realize that country's kind of the closest thing where you still get a guitar, you still get a drum,
right?
Yeah.
But no rock.
Yeah, it's funny because I look back, I think about the concerts I went to in my youth, and I've seen some of the greats. You know, you saw, Paul Simon, and I'd see Aerosmith and Robert Plant and all those folks, and it's not quite the same these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I don't consider a concert somebody with a laptop and a couple turntables. That doesn't that doesn't work for me. But that's the first sign too, Noelle, that I'm getting old as well too.
Well, I know, me too. It shows my age, but what are you going to do?
All right, back on track here, Noelle. My final question for you this evening is this. Can you speak to the substance abuse problems on college campuses right now? Do you think it's, I wouldn't say better, but is it more prevalent today in college campuses? And how do you deal with that from your aspect?
That is a great question. I've actually seen some improvement in that area, which isn't always what I hear in the news. But I'm actually seeing teens more, again, recently than in the past 10 years, being more responsible related to their drinking habits. Now, that's not everybody. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying there's more of them that are at least a little bit more aware of that, especially when you start talking about Greek life and all the things that are happening now with hazing and the attention that that's getting. Yeah. So I think there's some improvements. Now, there's still a ways to go, and I still think When we are as young adults, we don't have executive functioning, which is a cognitive skill, doesn't entirely develop until we're in our mid-20s. And so part of that skill involves insight and judgment and knowing what the consequences of our actions are going to be. And so I really see that, especially with the young men. I see that when they do go out with their friends, they don't always recognize when someone's really in trouble. And that has been concerning to me. So some of the things that we teach, in fact, are, okay, here's how to take care of your friend who's had too much to drink. And what I mean by that is keep checking on them, turn them on their side, so that if they do throw up, we start to explain the whole thing of, if you vomit and you're on your back, how you can choke on your vomit and what the mechanism, like actually physically what happens, why that happens, and how we can prevent that. And we talk about people can be awake and talking to you, but really be blacked out. That can happen. And what that looks like and how to help people through that. So especially for the girls, they may be at a party and not realize that they're really putting themselves at risk, because there is a part of their brain that makes decisions that is tuned out. Even they're walking around and talking to friends, and it looks like they're making decisions when their decision-making part of the brain is not doing that. And so we really try to give specific examples of what that looks like and what's happening, because that is what leads to the tragedies we hear about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I just add on that too? What about geographically? Yes. Do you see any differences?
I haven't seen a difference geographically. I'm certain there are from different college campuses. I mean, I have found that some of the smaller campuses, especially some of the private smaller campuses, of course, it's the same problems, but not to the same extent as I hear from the students that are on the larger college campuses, the larger state universities.
Interesting.
I don't know why that is. I don't know if that is... I'm not sure where that comes from, but that is definitely a trend. I wouldn't say as much geographically, but just as far as size of the school.
Right.
At least for my students.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And Noelle, do you have anything that you'd like to promote today to the audience?
Well, I do offer a free gift to anybody that's listening. They can go to www.lifeskills4, that's the number 4, college.com/free-checklist. And that is the 27 tips, tricks, and hacks that all teens need to know before they go off to college.
Nice little treat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, how can the listeners get in touch with you too? And I'll make sure I put those up in the show notes, so anybody who accesses the podcast will be able to read that and access you.
Thank you. Yes. Everyone can follow me on Instagram at lifeskills4college. Again, that's the number 4. That's the best place to find me. I check direct messages there on a regular basis. I post about 3 times a day. But they can also email me directly at Noelle, that's NOELLE.Ward, WARD, at lifeskills4, again, the number 4, college.com.
Yeah, definitely check her out on the gram, because she puts up some great content.
Yeah,
we can attest to that.
Great stuff in it. This has really been hugely informative.
Yeah. Noelle,
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Again, we've been speaking with Noelle Ward, Life Skills for College. And again, we thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing your knowledge with our audience.
Thank you.
And don't go anywhere yet. And we can contact us on the web, tacklingcollegesports.com. Make sure you sign up with your first name and email to be included in the Friday 5, which is a weekly email of 5 sports-related items that we think will be of interest to you, the TCS Nation. Email us at tacklingcollegesports@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Tackling College Sports, and Twitter at Tackling College, and on the gram, Tackling College. And until next time, be your best.
Be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.